So far, we've managed to talk about the role of telecommunications in convergence. We spoke about the role of telecoms, we spoke about the trends, we heard from some of the players, and also heard a little bit about some of the future opportunities with this whole industry opening up. We then heard from some of our key role players about the strategic partnerships out there, particularly from the public sector as well as the private sector. We then took some time to talk about business development and funding of ICT. Those who went to the various tracks, I trust that that issue came through and it was quite resonant, and we're all quite comfortable with what resources are available for us out there to then go out and implement these. Now we then talk about innovation, training and development as tools to support convergence. In this particular instance now, we're talking about capacitating the beneficiary, and also more so we're talking about the creative use of technologies to advance our service, to improve efficiencies, and to promote conservation. Particularly now, we're talking about the role of software application development in related to convergence. Our next speaker. This is now the machinery that allows us to have these particular tools that we can promote and advance convergence. Our next speaker is actually a recipient of a Women in ICT Inkuthazo Award. It's actually a developmental program by the Ict Summit that recognizes women contribution, and the achievement of women in ICT in the Eastern Cape. I'd like to please welcome on stage Professor Janet Wesson to come and give us a first presentation.
Okay. Welcome everybody. I don't know what happened to the other half, if they're still having their lunch. I have the privilege, I don't think I'm going to be able to see with my reading glasses, of being, the only academic on this platform today. Now, I'm used to facing a bunch of students or a bunch of researchers. Now, I've got a bunch of industry people. So I hope you can put up with what I have to say, and I hope it enables you to see things from a slightly different perspective. And I hope it's also not too academic. Right, is this thing working? Whoever my technical support person is? Okay, all right. Now, I decided, instead of putting down some points, to raise some questions as a basis for my talk. I think we've heard a lot on convergence, but I'm going to look at it from a software application development perspective. I'm actually, if you read the front blurb, I'm head of the Department of Computer Science and Information Systems, which is in the Faculty of Science at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. And obviously our primary focus is to develop computer scientists, but also people who become the future software developers in South Africa and abroad. So I'm looking at convergence very much from the impact that it has on software application development. I'm going to look at those challenges. What challenges does it present to us, both as software people and in the broader perspective? How can software development meet these changes? And I'm going to talk about some different principles that we need to look at and some different architectures that we need to embrace. And finally, I'm going to do a little plug for my research center, which is kindly sponsored by Telkom. And I mentioned Grace, I see Werner Kapp sitting over there. And I'm going to show you what research we are currently doing to meet these challenges. And it obviously is a local perspective. Now, unfortunately, I had to get an honors lecture this morning, and sometimes the professor can't be absent, so I missed this morning. So if I repeat something you've heard from industry, just ignore it. Just don't go to sleep. So I don't know if you've heard of the term time industries. Time stands for telecommunications, IT or internet, media and entertainment. So those four categories of industries are driving the digital convergence I'm sure you heard a lot about this morning. And what they're obviously doing is combining a number of different media and a number of different platforms. So we're seeing a combination of audio, video, data, and voice on the same network platforms. We're also seeing it on different devices. So we're seeing convergence, and I'll talk about that not only from a network perspective, from an application perspective, but also from a device perspective. And meanwhile, our users are getting smarter. So they're getting smarter, and therefore they're expecting more. Right. Digital convergence, I'm sure you referred to this morning, is the way to access the same service and content using, now I've used the term terminals, but that could obviously be different access points, it could be different interfaces, or different mobile devices using different types of networks. So whether those networks may be 3G networks, or whether they're mobile networks, or whether they're broadband networks. The end user doesn't care. The end user just wants the data they want in the format they want it, when they want it. So in order to provide this, organizations, and I'm talking broader than just software organizations, need to be agile, and they need to adapt to the changes in user expectations. The consumer is no longer just a consumer of data. In fact, in some cases, with the Web 2.0 technologies, the consumer is becoming a provider of information. So with things like blogs, people are actually providing the information on the internet, and they want to be able to share that information using a lot of new types of applications, for example, like Yahoo, like Facebook, like Flickr, and I'm sure my students could give you a few more examples. What does this impact on? Well, obviously, the first thing is networks, and I think we heard a lot about that this morning. As part of, I run the Centre of Excellence, Telecom Centre of Excellence at NMNU, and obviously a topic of research over the last 10 years has been the next generation networks. What is happening with networks? And primarily the push to make telecoms and IT software, the differences between the software disappear. Previously, telecom software was very complicated, and I'm sure a lot of people will tell you that. It tended to be written in more complicated languages, such as C++, and there were efficiency and operational issues. With software now, however, things are moving towards applications that are easier to develop and easier for the end user to use. And the difference between these two types of industries and the two types of software is disappearing. All we're seeing it from an end user perspective or consumer perspective is providing services. And the consumer doesn't even care where these services come from. We may talk about a certain amount of brand identity, but basically the consumer wants the services that they can have, obviously at the best cost. Now, this has resulted in several applications also converging. For example, you can download music on your PC, you can download it on your mobile device, you can download it on your Apple iPhone, you can download it even on your Apple iPod. So as I spoke about, it's not just a case of the user passively sitting in front of the TV and saying, right, what's on the channel tonight? The user wants to interactively select their content, to get video on demand, and to be able to interact with some of the content that is provided. And that is obviously putting a lot of pressure on capacity and network methods. How do we get the data across? How do we provide it across divergent networks, even though they are in a state of currently converging? The last facet of this problem, which is obviously multifaceted, is of devices. And if I had to ask any of you, how many mobile devices do you currently have on your person? How many people have got more than one? Mobile phone, laptop, anything else? Okay, you've probably got a GPS in your car, right? Okay, we need to stay in communication all the time. Now, the type of device that you use depends often on where you are and what the constraints are. But it's going to change. And the big push has been our internet-enabled entertainment devices. The entertainment industry is still huge, but it's having a large amount of implications for the software